Hey, good afternoon, everybody. You guys can hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Um, so let me give like 2 minutes more, and then we will start. Let me see who else will come in. Let me make a start. All right. In the meantime, you guys can take down the first two, number one and number two. Then we're going to whiteboard and work it out, right?
Good day, sir.
All right. Good day. Good day. You just came in.
Yes, sir.
All right. So in the meantime, take down number one and number two, and then we're going to whiteboard and work it out, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. The first one that we have here to attempt, we have R is equal to square root of 4 plus 3p square, all of this upon S, right? And they say here, looking at the first one, they say make P the subject of the formula. So right now, notice that R is the subject. Right, we notice that R is the subject. So now we got to get this P to be the subject, right? So let me go back to the whiteboard now. Good. So we have R is equal to the square root of 4 plus 3p squared divided by S. So this square root is square rooting everything. This entire fraction here, right? It's not just the top, nor is not just the bottom. It's both. Right? There's one thing to know. Right? So the first thing we need to take over, or in other words, the last thing that we need to take over is the, let me get a different color. Yeah. The last thing we need to take over, we need to look to see what get the closest relationship to P. Remember P, though we want to make the subject. Right? So looking at this here, the last thing you should take over is the square. Right? So the first thing you're going to take over is the square root. Then you're going to take over the denominator, S. Then you're going to take over the 4. Then you're going to take over the 3. And then you're going to take over the square. All right? So let's go. We take it over to the square root. When we take over square root over the equal sign, what will happen?
It becomes a square.
Becomes a square. So we got to square this R. All right? And the square root would remove, and then we left with 4 plus 3p squared all upon S. All right? Give me a second. Okay. So we take over the S now. The S is dividing. Then we take it over it, we multiply it. So we say R squared multiply S. We could put it like S. Put it together. That tells it multiplying R square S. Right? Or you can put R square multiply, put the sign, multiply by S. It doesn't matter, right? It's the same thing. Good. So when we take over the S, we left with now 4 plus 3p squared. Right? So now we take over the 4. The 4 is adding, is positive, right? You look for the sign in front. So once you see no sign, ratio means it's a positive, right? The positive 4. So we take over the positive 4 there. You need to go over and subtract. So it can be 4. It can be R square S minus 4. Let me take over this. And then we left with 3p squared. All right. We take over the 3. We need to go over and do what the 3 is doing.
Third multiplying, so when you go, you got divide.
Good, excellent. So it could be r square s subtract 4. And I got to divide everything that is on the next side. So you put a big line there and just divide by 3. Then we left with the p square. And last thing we need to take over the square, and then we get p as the subject. So we take over the square, what we get? Square root, right?
Yes, sir.
We got to square root everything on the next side. So we put a big square root like this and put everything inside of it. R square s minus 4 divided by 3. So now we get p by itself, so therefore mean p is the subject. All right, so take that down. And then I want you to work the second one for me. If you like 3 minutes. Let's see what the second one say. So they say given that m is equal to the square root of 1 minus rn squared. So the square root only governing the top. If you notice, you see it's small and it just governing the top. In this case, the square root was governing both the top and the bottom, right? Because it was big. But now they say, you see clearly that it's only governing the top, right?
Sir, please excuse.
Yeah.
You could please go over how you do the first one just now. I didn't hear you quite clearly breaking up.
All right. Let me go step by step now. Good. So for the first one, we had to make P the subject. P we want as the subject, right? We get R is equal to the square root in 4 plus 3p squared divided by s. So the square root is governing this entire thing, this entire fraction, right? So I'm saying we always take over the one that is closest to what we want to make as a subject. In this case, we want to make P as a subject. So the one that get the closest relationship to P, right? We take over last. So if you notice that we got to take over the square race of last. That is more closer to the P, right? So we just take over the square root first. Then we take over the S. Then we take over the 4. Then we take over the 3. Then we take over the square. So when we take over the square root, we carry over the square root and we got to square what is on the next side. So we got to square the R. See that? Then we take over the S. The S is divided. When we take it over, we need to go over and multiply. So it will be R square S. When they're together, it means that they are multiplying, right? Then we take over the 4. The 4 is a positive 4, right? The sign in front of the 4, you can see none, right? But when you see none, you know that is a positive 4. And we take it over, we need to subtract. So it will be R square S minus 4. Then we take over the 3. And 3 is multiplying the P square. So when we take it over, we need to go over and divide. So that's why we come here and divide. Then we take over, lastly, we take over the square. When we take over the square, you need to go over and square root everything on the next side. So you can square root the entire R square S subtract 4 divided by 3, right? Is that clear? All right. So I want you guys to attempt the second one.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. The second one, right? It said M is equal to the square root of 1 minus n squared divided by n. Right? This one is a little tricky. Let's see if you can attempt it. Remember I told you guys,
Sure.
yeah, go ahead.
The same concept applies to this one, right?
All right, so this one here is a little, what to say? You gotta think a little, or you gotta use some good algebraic skills here. So they say express n in terms of m. When I say express m in terms of m, it just telling you make m n the subject. Change it from m to n, right? If you notice, you get 2n. So we are gonna do that. Right? Take your time. Give you 3 minutes to think, because I want you guys to develop your thinking skills. And then I'll show you how to make n the subject. So again, we're making n the subject. Express n in terms of m. So basically telling you to make n the subject. All right, let me help you guys to work it out. All right, so this is number 1, right? So we're working on 2 now. So if you guys can master this worksheet, you have no problem with oh sorry, that's not it. So let me take this out. So it's good. So we have m is equal to the square root of 1 minus n squared all upon n. So the square root only governing the numerator, right? So keep that in mind. Are we making n the subject? So because the square root governing the numerator, we can't take over the square root for us in this case. We gotta take over the n, right? So it could be m. This n is dividing, so when you take it over, you gotta multiply, right? That's the rule. So it'll be m times n. So basically putting it together, mn. All right?
So,
And then we,
but you're making any subject?
yeah, we make it. I will show you how n will become the subject. So remember I told you, if you notice, you get 2m, n, or you get 2x, or you get 2s, or more than one of the same thing that you want to make the subject. At some point, you will have to factorize. So we got to play with the equations, and try to get them together. Right? So it's a technique. So we carry over the n, right? We get m times n. We're left with 1 subtract n squared. All right? Good. So let's carry over the square root. When we carry over the square root, what will happen? We got square.
Square. Yes, sir.
What we squaring? Everything on the next side, right?
Yes, sir.
So we're
Yes.
squaring the m and the n. So we're squaring it. And we left with 1 subtract n squared. So this is telling me here, is telling me here that m is squared individually and the n. So in other words, m squared
And square.
n squared is the same thing. Like if I put mn and I put a bracket and square it. So we got to take it out like that, right? So we take it out. We square them individually. This is the same. When you see this here, know that it means both of them, m and the n, are squared individually, right? So this is what we get, right? Now, what we need to do is to take over this minus n squared. Let me take over this minus n squared now. So this minus n squared, when we go over here, we gotta do. So we take over this, hit go over n squared. Now we taking over this n squared minus n squared. When it go over, you gotta add. It'll be plus n squared. And the one we left on this side, right? Now we got factorize. So we want to make n the subject. So this, sorry, this is gonna be a square here too, right? M squared, n squared, yeah. Now we want to make n the subject. So all we gotta do is
Take over the m square and the n square.
huh? Go again.
You have to take over the m square and the n square.
We gotta factorize out the n. Reason being,
Sir.
you want to make n the subject, yeah.
No, never mind, never mind.
No, you see it
Sorry.
as
Yes, sir.
good. We factor out the n square. So we take out the n square. You know, always factorize, we do factorization. Then we say n square into m square n square. You're left with the m square, right? You got the n square cancel out each other and you're left with the m square. Then we have n square into n square. We get 1. I'll go back there for you just now, right? You have 1 on this side. Good. So we factorizing. Let me recap factorizing. So we can factorize it. So we put a little boxes for you guys and let me show you in details how we go about factorizing that. So we have m square, n square plus n square. So our objective is to make n the subject, right? So we need to factor out the n, right? N square. And then we put a bracket, then we divide both of these into the n square. So the first one we have m square n square divided by the n square. These two can cancel, the n square and the n square cancel out, and you're left with the m square. So we put that in here, m square. Then we also divide the n square into the n square. So we have the n square divided by the n square. Anything divided by itself will give me 1. 5 divided by 5, 1. 2 divided by 2, 1. So n square divided by n square gives me 1. So that's why you have to get plus 1 in here. So when you factorize it, it can look like this. N square, open bracket, m square plus 1. And we know we have 1 on this side. Now, we carry over the n. We want to make n the subject, remember that? So we take over the entire bracket. What the bracket is doing, multiplying the n square, right? Bracket is as multiply.
Yes, sir.
So we have the n square. We take over the bracket. You can go over and divide the 1. So you can get m square plus 1. And remember, we want to make n the subject, not n squared. So we just take over the square and we square root everything. So we take over this square and we square root everything, right? So we have now n will therefore be equal to the square root of 1 divided by m square plus 1. So the square root is governing the top and the bottom. Is it big enough? Good. So take note of this. While practicing, you can develop all these techniques. So I tell you again, math is about practicing. It just can't happen just like that, right? So let me go step by step back again. So we have m. Yeah, go again.
Sorry?
Go ahead.
Yeah, when the class is over, can you send some similar to this to do exercises?
Like this.
Yes, sir.
All right. I think we get some similar ones down the line, but I ain't too sure. But I'm gonna ensure I can just make them up.
All right.
Yeah. So look here. I'm gonna tell you guys today will be some challenging ones, some ones that you gotta think a little. All right. So we have m is equal to the square root of 1 minus n square all upon n. The objective is to make n the subject. We notice that you get 2n involved in this thing. So opposite, I can make n the subject. So we play around with the equation. We carry over the n, the denominator. Carry is normally a carry over denominator for us, right? Carry it over on the next side. You get m times n. Then we carry over the square root. You notice we got to square both of these, you know. So it'll be mn squared. And we extract it. Because we notice that this here is also m squared, n squared. Good. And we know on this side, we're going to left with 1 minus n squared. So now we see we get 2n squared. We could put them together and factorize. So we carry over the minus n squared. Move it, add. So we get m squared, n squared plus n squared. So we factorize it out now, the n squared. When you factorize it out now, we get n squared, open bracket, n squared plus 1. And we notice that we left with 1 on the next side, right? So we just put the 1 there. Now, we carry over the entire bracket. The bracket is multiplying. So you need to go over and divide. So you get 1 divided by n squared plus 1. And we want to make n the subject. We left with n squared on this side. So we just carry over the square. And we square root everything. So we square root 1 divided by n squared plus 1. So after time, this is going to be easy, pop. So yeah, don't worry. All right. So let me see. Take down number. Yeah, take down number 3 and 4. We have like, give you like, let me see, 4 minutes to work the first one, number 3. All right. So this session might cut off. So when you come on back, we're gonna work number 3 and number 4. But I want you guys to attempt number 3. So go ahead, number 3. You say if 1 upon r is equal to 1 upon v, subtract 2 upon t. Express v in terms of r and t. So all they're asking you to do is to make v the subject. Let me see how skillful are you guys. Make v the subject. Let's try it. Try it. All right, so the meeting gonna cut off. So we just ensure you guys come on back and we work number 3 and number 4, right?
Yes, sir.